Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. Today, we have with us Trevor Dudeck, founder and chief strategist at Lemonade. Hi, Trevor. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, for taking out time and joining us, for a new episode of E-Coffee with Experts. Really excited to have you and, talk marketing with you. But before we, dive into the details and questions, it would be great if you could introduce yourself and, what you do at Lemonade.
Sure. My name is Trevor. I'm the chief strategist here and co-founder, actually. So I did start the company with a friend of mine, Rowan Brooks. And so he is our chief creative director. He really oversees the creative side of the business. I oversee the strategic and kind of, new business side of our organization. And that's kind of the merriment of the two sides of our partnership that works really well. We met a while back working together at a production company. We both come from the content production space. We've all been storytellers and kind of always really been drawn to that part of the industry, but we were really seeing a gap. This was 6-7 years ago, in that there was a lot of great content being developed specifically for social, but it wasn't really being developed with social in mind, and it wasn't really being shared with the world in the right way. And so we wanted to create an organization that was better integrated, because we would often get these RFPs from other agencies when we were just a production company. And there were always kind of things we had to fill in, gaps we had to fill in terms of, okay, this is a great idea, but it's not really designed well for that platform, or it's not really developed with the paid marketing aspect that's going to need to be behind it to drive it. Everybody had this idea of, we can just make a viral video, right? But there's no such thing as a viral video. There's a video, and then it might go viral, right? And so, we really left that organization together and created Lemonade with that goal to create more of a full service integrated agency where content, social, and paid media could really talk to each other in a better way, so that everything was not developed in a vacuum, but was developed more cohesively. And I think we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing some really, great work. In fact, uh, while we move forward, we will talk about some of your case studies and some of the exciting work you do.
Appreciate it.
You also say, that you have like, a proven process which turns strangers into fans, into customers. That's exactly what a brand wants. Could you please explain your process?
Yeah, I think we kind of have like a process for everything, and then that all rolls up to a process. But what it comes down to is, when we start working with a brand, we dive really deep into an audit. And everybody in the agency roles typically has an audit process of some kind. Everyone's is usually unique. Sometimes they're not, but I'd like to think that ours is. And really what happens during that period of time, which for us is about a 30-day period of time, it's a pretty deep process, where we're not just looking at, okay, how many followers do you have on social? What have you been doing there? We are looking into your historicals. But if you're a new brand, for example, or if you haven't been happy with your performance, your historicals are only worth so much
Right.
of the value there. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The rest of what we're doing is really looking at everything that we want to accomplish, what our goals are, and kind of the gap between those. Who are your competitors? What are the steps and the tactics that we want to take to get there? And then building out really deep audience profiles, so that we know, not just who is the, typical demographic that you want to reach, but who are the 6 or 7 versions of that person that you want to reach. where do they exist, where do they hang out, how are we going to develop that custom content for them, because that's really where the story gets created, and that's
Right.
really where we turn that stranger into a fan, and we find, okay, if you're in, we do a lot of work in gaming, for example. How are we going to speak to that gamer in a way that feels super authentic, that also feels super authentic to the genre of that game, and not just, oh, it's gaming, so let's go on Twitch, right? We get that all the time, and it's like, well, if you're a mobile app, Twitch probably isn't a good play for you because it's highly desktop viewership, right? And so we want to break through all of those kind of easy, low-hanging fruit decisions and go super deep and go into the analytics and go into the research so that we can build these profiles out. And then we go into kind of a 3-week testing process once we launch a campaign, and really test our theories, like test ourselves, like how correct were our ideas? Because you're always, even in best case scenario, you're close, but you're not
Right.
100% there, right? So it's like, let's keep ourselves honest, and then from there, let's weed out anything that's not performing or that's not giving us the insights. And you always learn something, and from there you make those adjustments, and you adjust everything from your channels and budgets to your actual content, and that's where I think you start to see communities develop, and you start to see fans, and you start to see ecosystems around brands that are lasting versus just the conversions and the like immediate gratifying metrics that everybody wants, which are important, but we need those longer lasting elements if we're going to really build the brand.
No, absolutely. And I think, like, telling a story is so important now. I mean, you can't just, kind of have content just for the sake of it, right? It all has to resonate,
100%.
resonate the story you want to tell. So yeah, absolutely makes sense. Absolutely. So Trevor, like one follow-up question, since you talked about, like, the brand audit, which again is very important. When you look at, while you're doing that audit, when you look at the competition, I mean, again, I understand that, for telling a unique story of that brand, I mean, you just have to actually say what the brand, like represents. But when you're doing this competition analysis, like any particular elements or main elements that you always check, I mean, while you're doing that?
Yeah, I think we're definitely looking at typically there'll be a few kind of key competitors or north stars, right? That people are looking at, and some of those can be really lofty goals, and some of those can be more realistic. But those are just helpful ways to start. A lot of times too, we'll take people through a tone of voice workshop, and we find that even with our most established brands that we work with, people who've been around for 100 years as a brand, who you just assume have all of those things figured out, oftentimes they don't as much as they think they do. And that's okay. You get busy, you grow, you ebb and flow, you age out of certain customer demographics. And so this tone of voice workshop, which lots of people have a version of. So it's not to say that it isn't important to do regardless of who you work with, but I think ours is really fun, and it kind of brings you through this journey where it's like, okay, if your brand was a song, what song would it be? If it was a movie, what movie would it be? If it was a person, would it be a teacher? Would it be a caregiver? Would it be that the fun uncle? Like these things that are just easy for anyone in the organization to answer and not super complex marketing speak. And then once we go through all that and get opinions from kind of a decent group of 5 or so people, not just that one contact that we're dealing with, we can start to really build out this tone of voice. And that starts to allow us to say, okay, well, I know you're saying you want to be like Netflix, or someone else who you really think is doing a great job, but what's coming out over here is that you guys are much more like GameStop or whatever, right? And that's okay, but let's identify who you really are, because these North Stars you have may or may not really align. And then you can start to really develop what your storytelling should be and who you're speaking to. And I think that's where you protect yourselves from just jumping on bandwagons. That's something people are kind of getting murdered for on social right now, which is like, hey, it's Asian American heritage, let's just post something to say we support it. And it's like, if the organization is not actually doing something to support it, and you're just putting up a picture to say we support it, that's not going to cut it. So it's those things where if you truly know who you are as a brand, then you can know which of these bigger topics, these macro trends you can participate in. And then you can also know which of the micro trends and kind of more custom things that are unique to your industry that you should be doing every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Also, when you're talking about like brand growth, how can one leverage social proof?
I think for us, it comes down to, for example, sometimes we'll get asked to do a big like paid media campaign. And I think one of the things that comes into play there is we'll say, okay, well, who's managing your organic social? Because that's also something we do quite a bit of. And even if it's not going to be us, we want to make sure that all of your channels and all of your organic content are really well dialed in, ideally before we're doing a big, massive paid campaign or even a little one, frankly, because what, most people I think realize now, but sometimes kind of rush past, is that even if you get someone to your landing page or through your funnel, they're going to check out your product and your page, but they're still going to go bounce over to your socials and kind of check in on that social proof, right? Are they a real company? Who are they? Even if I know the brand, what are they up to? Do I align with their values? All of that is happening right now. Pretty much anytime anyone looks at anything, right? So I feel like that's really where you have to have done your homework, and you have to have done the work, right? To build the social proof. And so we do focus a lot on those like foundational elements is what we call it. We got to build the foundation of the house before you can start putting on all kinds of accessories.
Absolutely, absolutely. Also like, like talking about like, brand, like a lot is spoken about like, cause marketing. How effective do you think is cause marketing for brands, and like, is it for everyone?
Um, I definitely don't think it's for everybody. And I think there's probably different ways that people would describe it too, or different people have different definitions of it, right? There can be, a charitable cause, and I think that can be done right, and there's right ways to do that. But again, you want to be careful, like that previous comment, that it's not just kind of obviously for the PR moment. You also want to make sure that at the same time you do get your PR moment out of that, right? So it's a balance. But if it's obvious, and people are so savvy now, if it's obvious that you're really just doing it for that, and it's like, oh, we just give 10% of our product to this charity, and that's our ploy to get you to buy more of our widget. That's just something that I think is getting less and less traction. I think that it's almost better not to have that than it is to just be really kind of designed from the ground up around that function, if that's really what you're going to be, or to have really meaningful kind of partnerships where you say, hey, we're going to partner with this organization to do this upcoming event because they're really good at X, Y, or Z, and we're really good at what we do, right? So everybody's kind of staying in their lane, and there is a charity benefiting, right? So to me, there's kind of this checklist you got to go through to see if it really makes sense. But what do you think? I'm kind of curious. What have you seen?
Well, I mean, same here, like at the end of the day, a lot of people, like have tried, being, associated with a
Hmm.
charity, just to kind of show, that, get that, sympathy from clients. But then at the end of the day, today, with social media and with so much data available, you can't just fool your clients, right? I mean, you actually have to mean it to be associated with a cause. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, if you can be associated with a cause which kind of resonates with your brand, and you actually are doing it, because then like it comes back to the same thing where you say every brand says a story. Then like which kind of charity are you associated with? I mean, does that resonate with your brand image as well? So I think that is very important before just jumping into like like cause marketing just for the sake of it.
100% agree.
Right. Also, like with so many channels available, right? I mean, driving engagement, seems like a challenge. So, like how big, and, like you work with gaming clients as well. So I'm sure, there are so many opportunities of marketing across various channels. I mean, how do you tackle that? Or, I mean, how do you strategize for that?
So like channel selection
Yep. Yeah.
got it. Yeah, I think the channel selection really comes out of that audit for us. It's within that process where we're figuring out, okay, where who is it that we're trying to reach, building those detailed profiles of the demographics, and the habits, and really what those consumers look like, where they're going to be, and then starting to see where that aligns with the platforms, right? There's kind of obvious ones where, if you're going more Gen Z and younger, you're looking towards TikTok, and the further you go up, it's Instagram, Facebook. It all just kind of starts to scale in certain directions. But then it gets much more granular, where it's like, well, how granular do we need to target based on how specific or niche our product or service is. And then some platforms have more or less capabilities, and that's where we'll start to see, oh well, maybe there's limitations with social, and we'll have to go more programmatic because there's more data we can access there, and there's more layering that we can bring into the mix, especially with like iOS 14 and some of those things that are making data a little bit more challenging for marketers, which is okay, but it's just a matter of understanding really what we need to accomplish. So for us, it does come in that initial research phase, which is why we'll typically kind of not be a great fit if someone's just kind of like, hey, we want to do this, here's where we want to be, because we want to take that breath and that step back and say, well, let's confirm that makes sense. Let's actually verify that those are the right decisions. And then let's test it for a short period of time. Let's test it with smaller budgets, and then once we've confirmed those things and weeded out 2 or 3 of the 10 channels we might test, then we go heavy. Then we push all the budget.
Absolutely, absolutely. Also, when you were talking about videos, you said a very interesting, thing where you said that, like, everybody wants to make a viral video, but you don't make a viral video, you just make a video, it goes viral.
Yeah.
Same holds true, for a game as well, right? I mean, everybody wants their game to go viral, right? I mean,
Yep.
but again, you just make a game and you market it well, I mean, you don't make a viral game. So when you are strategizing those strategies, I mean, like how do you like make those viral strategies, or like what is the best process or approach for like marketing a game when you are starting off?
Yeah, I think it's like, so it's like, what are the like, what could you sprinkle in to give it the chance to go viral, is kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's, it is really just that. It's like it's giving it the best chance, because there is no guarantee with that. And also, like, the definition of viral is a whole other thing to get into too, because it's what that is now versus what it used to be is so massive. You can kind of go viral within your own little community, which is a success. It should be seen as a success versus like thinking you have to take over the entire internet. But I think, it's like stacking the deck in your favor. So, if you're a game, for example, number one, you got to have a good product or service or a good game. And that's something where, we can't really control what it is, so hopefully the product or the game or the service is great. But it does seem that content is such a big factor. We've time and time again seen where we've taken kind of the same budget, same channels, similar tactics. I think we still improve things, but different creative that we've developed, and seen multiples of improvement on the results of the performance because of the creative. Because that's typically where we'll see a lot of the brand struggle, is to produce high volumes of original content and original storytelling. And that is going to be, I think, the biggest factor. The other pieces of the puzzle are all then going to kind of materialize from it, right? So once we've started to develop the concept, then we know, okay, now we know this should really be a concept that's actually developed natively for TikTok, for example. So that means that, a trailer or something isn't going to work. It should be developed by an influencer, because if you're on TikTok, the only authentic content you're responding to as a fan or a customer is something that looks native to the app, right? It can't look like a polished, edited piece. Those are on there too, but if you want massive kind of virality from something, it's going to be an influencer. It's going to be someone we kind of partner with to create that content. Whereas, an Instagram or a programmatic or something, we can do really well with something that we edited, that we created, that has actors, that's totally different vibe. So that's where that kind of integration, I think, is the magic touch for us, of understanding where we're going, which is Z, where we're starting, which is A, and then everything in between to kind of match it all up properly. And for us, it's like we have these back and forth dialogues between creative and strategy, and those go on repeatedly. I think the traditional way that a lot of marketing is still done is like, hey, we have a TV commercial, let's put it out on these networks, and then they go make the TV commercial, right? And that's even the way it's done for digital a lot now,
right?
And then it's like, okay, here we go, we have the spot, cut it into a couple versions, even though it's not really made for a vertical size, make it work. And then it doesn't really perform as well because it's not designed natively for that platform. So we spend a lot of time in those details as well, making sure that the consumer experience is really native and is really custom, and does feel as though it was meant for me on that channel that I'm viewing it on. I think those are the steps you have to take. I think it's less about, making the funniest, viral video or trying to come up with the craziest stunt. Because you can try all day to figure out what that next thing is going to be, or the next cat video, but that's just luck.
Right. You took a very interesting, entertaining approach while marketing for Casino Matrix. Could you give some insights about that campaign?
Yeah, definitely. They've been a client for a while, and we wanted to do something different than the traditional casino marketing. Traditionally you see just people throwing chips in the air, everybody's winning, it's just winning, drinks and girls. And some of that is necessary, and some of that vibe is really required. But we went much more of a comedic route, a little bit like even more family, I think, and honestly just more relatable, because we broke it down to this kind of millennial, like young, almost like young adult, young parent, kind of demographic for the customer that was who we were targeting. And, felt like what we wanted to create was something episodic, so that, every time you saw one of the commercials, you would go, oh, this is a new one in the series. And it felt more like a sitcom, and kind of harkened back to some of the, kind of sitcom, kind of writing styles that you're used to seeing. And so it followed the same format for every spot. And we did a 60, a 30, and a 15 for each one. But basically, they all included the same friend group, all in kind of different situations at home where they were trying to create a fun at home moment, like trying to play cards, but they get interrupted by, the mom with the baby who's like, come on, it's your turn to watch the baby. Or the wife and the husband trying to have a nice romantic date at home, but their cell phones won't stop going off, modern interruptions. And every time that the answer that they come up with is, you know what, let's just go to Matrix. Like, let's just make this simple. We have a place we can go to have fun, that's safe, that's clean, that's not like anything you would expect in the sleazy casino. And it wasn't focused on the like, hey, go get rich. It was like, let's go have a nice, fun experience, and kind of get out of whatever is going on in our kind of stale, at home moment we're stuck in right now. And I think people really related to that. And the storytelling just kept going. So we were able to kind of keep using those characters in radio, in, digital. And it honestly worked for a good few years before we had to change the creative.
Right. Podcasts are doing well. You also have your own podcast. How do you see podcasts as a marketing strategy?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways. I think that if you're already an established business, or you have a business that's different than podcasting, like ours, for example, I think that it can be kind of a marketing tool, an ancillary kind of piece of the puzzle. And really, it can just be a good way to network, to show people what you're doing, the same way you would kind of show people what you're up to and who you're working with on your socials. It's a little bit more of an interactive way to do that. And I think, now that people like to research who they're going to work with or consider working with, you can go listen to a podcast episode and see, okay, who's, the founder of this company, or the person who does marketing here, like what's their vibe, So I think there's a lot of things that it provides your potential customer. And then, the kind of famous thing that I think I take away for podcasts is Garyvee's rule, which is like, bring your ideal customers onto your podcast, even if they're not customers yet, right? And use it as a sales tool. And they may or may not become a client, but that way it's not you reaching out saying, let me sell you something. It's you just building a relationship. And so I think that's one of the best ways to use it. Then I think there's a whole other category, which is not my area of expertise, which is like, I'm going to be a full-time podcaster and create, a zone for myself, or a niche. And that is, I think, arguably much more difficult. And you really have to kind of carve out a spot for yourself to compete. And so I applaud people who, are able to do that.
Absolutely. Well, Trevor, I know we are short on time, but one last question. Any special
Sure.
tip that you would like to give our audience that they could use and benefit from?
Yeah, well, I guess let me ask, who do you feel is like the majority of your audience? Like more business owners, more yeah, give me an idea, I guess.
It's more of marketers. So either
Marketers,
like
yeah.
other agency owners, or
Yeah.
marketers.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would leave people with is, we're always kind of having to figure out the best way to market ourselves. And so it's like, what we do is more B2B, but then what we do for our customers is B2C, right? So there's this kind of interesting trade-off. But I've really just learned to love that. and learn to love like marketing our business. And I think some people who aren't traditionally like salespeople or marketers can get intimidated by that. And I would just say really learn to love bragging about your team, the people you have who are going to work on the projects, the things that you've done. And if you're brand new that you haven't done yet, then it's building up who you're bringing to the table, the expertise you're bringing to the table, the years of experience, right? The excitement you have that the person down the street doesn't, because they, so many clients, they can't handle another one. You're going to be the one who's, there answering every phone call because they're not. And so I would say that's really how we've built our business, is just by really leaning into marketing ourselves well. And you have to do that until you're more established. And so that would be my big piece of advice.
Well, Trevor, thank you so much, for joining us today. And it was
Absolutely.
lovely having you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.